convinced that cooperation and partnerships are the main tool to solve problems of a globalized, interconnected world. COVID pandemic has showed us that no individual country and no region can do it alone. ECLAC, the European Commission and the OECD Center, we have been intensively working on this new narrative we call development in transition. And it's a way I would say, to change the paradigm of cooperation and to strengthen partnerships in our efforts. So I have to just say that Latin American and Caribbean structural gaps have been magnified by the effects of COVID. And we are definitely in a crossroad in terms of our development model. And we have to be serious about recovery strategies that must be unconventional and transformative. We know also that in our region, unfortunately, growth is very mediocre. Increased inequality, poverty, and informality are structural problems that we have to face. And we know that as of June, last 28 June, 1.2 million people had died because of coronavirus, and we represent only 8.4% of the global population. Still, we have 32% of the global total with this terrible disease. So the weak trajectory growth forecast for 2021 is 5.2, for 2022 is 2.9, and there is a risk. We are facing a risk of going to a very low pandemic growth in investment if we don't reactivate structural change. We need, the first thing we need is vaccines. And we need an equal access to vaccines. And here I want to congratulate Mexico, has done a tremendous job with great solidarity. They have already donated around 1 million doses to countries of Central America, the Caribbean, Paraguay, and Bolivia. Marta can update us on this. And I think we have a deficit of solidarity in the world. So when these things happen, like Mexico's example, is something that we definitely need to highlight. So we need to make choices, very difficult choices in terms of where are we going to put the very scarce money we have in front of us, or none practically, and how we can invest on industrial and technological policies to promote growth. That's what we need to do, growth and jobs. But we need to do it green. We need to do it with sustainability options like, I don't know, like, for example, energy transition towards sustainability, strengthen the support to circular economy, to bioeconomy, to electromobility. So we definitely have to move into that direction. We are also confronting, I would say, a dilemma in terms of cooperation, because today, unfortunately, the middle-income countries in our region is basically conformed by middle-income countries, either low, medium, high, are being left behind. And many of our developing countries, particularly the Caribbean, and here we're going to have Antigua and Barbuda with us, are very dependent still of the official development assistance. But once they are considered middle-income countries or high middle-income countries, development assistance, ODA, is in certain way out of their financial scope. So we need to, and I want to recognize the presence of Rodrigo Carazo from Costa Rica. You know, Costa Rica is the chair of ECLAC, and yesterday we were discussing precisely with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Costa Rica the importance of this concept of development in transition to really, in certain way, tackle the middle-income traps, the middle-income gaps, and how we have to find a new metrics, a new, I would say, capability to measure different beyond GDP per capita. And that's something that we really need to do in this region. And I'm happy to say that with the OECD Development Center and with the European Commission, we have been working already since 2017 to change the narrative of development and to really put forward this concept of development in transition. And I'm sure that Mario Pezzini is going to talk about this, but indeed, we really need to change this paradigm. First, as I said before, to be more inclusive in terms of cooperation and have everybody participate regardless of the level of development. And second, international cooperation must be pro-development and not so much as pro-poor. Of course, we need to get out of poverty, no question about it. But also we need new forms of financing, and we need that multilateral financing institutions make sure that this region has urgent needs. And I also want to say that the Fund Against COVID Economics, FASE, is a mechanism put forward by the government of Costa Rica to redirect liquidity from developed to developing countries that requires serious consideration, and that we need to include that into the rationale of including the middle income countries. And the other one is the debt suspension initiative put forward by the G20. And I think, again, we need to change and increase the scale, the scope, and include the middle income countries. And also, I mean, we have to move into a multilateral framework to discuss debt restructuring. Of course, we have we have tasks that we need to improve. We have a regional integration is something that we need to work in Latin America and the Caribbean to, of course, improve South-South cooperation. And I think, and I have to say that CELAC, presided by Mexico, is doing tremendous efforts. Actually, next Saturday, 24 July, all the ministers of foreign affairs of the region are going to meet precisely to discuss how to improve their capabilities to produce vaccines and to be better off and less dependent on the external processes. So I think it's time for us to rethink development cooperation, time for us to rethink this wonderful window of opportunity we have, and to think and to how to consolidate the wonderful relationship we have with the European Commission and with OECD Development Center. Let me stop here because I really want to pass the floor to my colleagues that are going to make a quick introductions, I'm sure, and then to the participants, with whom I really want to thank so especially for being with us today. So let me immediately turn to Hans Condones, who is our very, very dear colleague from the European Commission, recognizing, dear Condones, that you have been such a good sport with ECLAC, the European Commission. You are the General Director of International Partnerships, and we really have a pleasure to have you with us. So Condones, the floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope I will not disappoint you in being a good sport. Well, first of all, Ministers, Excellencies, really a pleasure to be here. And of course, my Commissioner, Jutta Urpilainen, would have loved to be here, but unfortunately, the European Commission at the political level is having its seminar today. And so all our politicians are locked up in the Berlaymont to do some strategic thinking following the big package that was adopted yesterday on the Green Deal, and in order to prepare jointly the State of the Union that our President will pronounce in September. So she wanted me to pass you really her regards and also the regrets for her not to be here. Of course, I want to start with thanking you, Alicia and Mario, of course, for being the co-hosts of this event, and you'll forgive me for saying a special word to Mario. I mean, you're retiring, and I think you're leaving huge shoes to fill, and I really want to thank you also on behalf of the European Commission for absolutely outstanding work that you have done as head of the OECD Development Center. Now, for the discussion of today, I would basically, indeed, as you've said, like to be brief, and I would come with basically three messages: a message on timeliness, a message on readiness, and a message on togetherness. Timeliness first, because I think there could probably be no better moment to launch the Latin America Economic Outlook 2021 than this point in time, when precisely as you've said, Alicia, I mean, COVID-19 has so radically struck all countries across the globe, and of course, very strongly hit Latin America and the Caribbean. And therefore, the need, the opportunity of having an evidence-based analysis that will allow the leadership to guide the decisions that they will take on guiding the recovery is fundamental. And I think that the outlook will provide a very solid piece of information. We all know that the policy decisions that will be taken over the next couple of months and year will be absolutely defining and will determine whether we will be able to build that kind of sustainable, inclusive future that we all talk about. And the report, interestingly, covers a lot of ground. It goes from structural, macroeconomic and microeconomic issues to social ones, which is probably a very correct reflection of the real multidimensional angle, character of the crisis we are all facing. And so there's been no better time to come with this. My second message is about readiness. Readiness on the side of the European Union to stand by you. And I think indeed the work we've been doing over the past years on this narrative and concept of development in transition will hopefully now really pay off. I mean, you will have noticed that the title of my commissioner and the title of my Directorate General, which used to be Development Cooperation, DEFCO, has now changed into International Partnerships, INTPA. And for good reasons, because policy-wise, we are indeed moving from what used to be, let's say, a more clear focus on levels of development to real international partnerships that are based on common priorities and that englobe middle income countries. And I think that recently the European Council, our highest institution, gathering the European heads of state and governments on the 14th of June, in the conclusions it adopted, has put specific emphasis on the importance of the partnerships we have with middle income countries, many of them, as you've said, being in Latin America, Caribbean. That's policy-wise, but also financially, we are rallying to the cause. And our new financial instrument, as most of you will know, we start a new budgetary cycle. We have a new financial instrument called Ndiki Global Europe. And that instrument is also innovative in that it brings together the multitude of instruments we had before, but also ends the principle of graduation and therefore allows us to work on a solid basis with not just the least developed countries, but also the whole variety of middle income countries, lower, middle and upper middle income countries. So also financially, we are better equipped, better ready than before. That brings me to my third point, which is togetherness. I think we all agree that probably the real challenges we all face individually as countries, as regions, and ultimately as a global community, these challenges are global. They're about climate change, they're about human-centric digitalization, they're about inclusiveness and jobs for all, they're about a multilateralism that works for the benefit of everyone. And they are, of course, these days very much also about global health. And I think even if they play out differently, with different degrees of impact in different parts of the world, ultimately, we can only live up to these challenges, we can only address them if we address them together, everywhere, as a global community. And as you've rightly said, that's not just about setting out jointly the policy priorities, which by and large we are doing, but it's also by jointly mustering the means that are needed to address them. And therefore, financial cooperation at a global scale is absolutely a must. And I think the IMF has produced extremely rich material, and I think Kristalina Georgieva has been very outspoken about this, that there's not only the risk of a vaccine gap opening up, but also a real risk of a recovery gap, because the tools, the monetary tools and the fiscal tools that countries across the globe have really differ. And what we will want to avoid is that after decades where the global communities was catching up, that we create a new recovery split. And that will require substantial mobilization of funding. To a certain extent, I think that a successful global recovery really will hinge on how we can reconcile two trends. On the one hand side, the fact that there are scarce public resources and the pandemic constrains them even more, while on the other hand, there are trillions of private assets in pension funds, in investment banks that actually are looking for investment opportunities. And the opening therefore is, how can we use the limited public funds in a way that they catalyze private capital and direct it to developing green markets? This is for us a very promising avenue, and I'm therefore very glad that we've been able as a European Commission also to make our first contribution to the Green Bond Fund in Latin America, to LA Green, managed by KfW. And this is for us a track to follow. How can we use the public funding to actually leverage those bigger amounts that sit in the private capital markets? This is development in transition. This is our approach beyond donor recipient, being multi-stakeholder with the private sector and really tailor-made engagement to help you drive your green, sustainable digital recovery. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I hope that over the next couple of weeks and months, as we shape our new agenda, we can really drive that home. Thank you very much, and really a pleasure to be here with you. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Ken. Actually, you were a very good sport, I have to say, both in terms of timing, but also in terms of the message. Now, let me tell you, dear Ken, that we have a lot of trust and hope, if I can call it, that the European Commission can help us bridge Latin America and the Caribbean with Europe, because we believe that this is essential for this region. With Europe, we want to make that transition. We are developing in transition. We want to make this transition, and we need Europe, because Europe can help us to bridge the tremendous global asymmetries that we are facing today in the world. And I'm so glad about the change of the name, which I think is wonderful, because partnerships reflects equality, equal partners, which I like very much, and also the instruments you're pulling forward that are really in line with this development in transition that we are looking for. Ken, thank you so much for being with us. I know that you probably have to go. I hope not, but thank you for being with us, and I really hope that we will meet each other very soon in Europe or in Chile or in Mexico or in the ocean, actually. But let's do that. Anyway, Ken, thank you so much. And let me then pass the word immediately to my very dear friend, Mario Pezzini. And let me, as you very well say, Ken, we are very sad today, and because Mario Pezzini is leaving us. And I feel that we have been working so closely together. What are we going to do without you, Pezzini? And we have developed such an invaluable partnership. And I really want to say how much we really value this, because for ECLAC, together with the OECD Center, together with UCAN, we have been able to put together thoughts, ideas, instruments, and what we are going to do now together is this LEO, the Latin American Economic Outlook, which we have been doing for several years, which is a concrete product out of this new facility that the European Commission has created, and that is being done for, I would say, the purpose of helping countries of our region. The Latin American Economic Outlook this year is going to be about how to recover from the pandemics. And I have to say that Mario Pezzini has been a very good companion all these years. Mario, I really want to pay tribute to your wonderful dedication, professionalism, most importantly, your friendship and your humanism. So let me turn to you, Mario Pezzini, and I know this might be the last session we are going to be together, at least. while you are in the OECD Center. You are not going to get rid of us anyway. So Mario, please come along.
Thank you. And first, welcome to this 2021 pre-launch of the Latin American Economic Outlook, Working Together for an Inclusive and Sustainable Future. The title, it says it all. And a pleasure to share the welcome remarks along with you, my dear Alicia Bárcena, Executive Secretary of ECLAC, and with Con Dons, Director General for International Partnership of the European Commission, and to stay with other friends, and obviously with Mario Cimoli, that appears also twice on the screen. Be sure there is no hidden secret strategy for the Marios to occupy all places. Let me mention 4 points very quickly, just accent because you said it all. First, history. When I am holding back the years and I'm looking back, the Leo has become over this year a platform for dialogue that seeks to connect different actors from the public and the private sector, from one side to the other of the ocean, civil society, academia, and international organizations to debate and seek innovative responses for improving development lack. I remember 10 years ago, the Leo was not that. So we have built a platform. I think in itself, this is a global public good. My second point is about what we are facing. And Alicia and Cons, you said it very clearly. Now, the crucial point is that we observe over these years that our belief, almost religious belief of the past, the growth is synonymous with development. Actually, it doesn't apply. The conception of development cannot look only to the GDP, but go beyond and brings about national and international cooperation as facilitator. In fact, we have several times stressed that we are facing traps that are not immediately recorded by the level of GDP. Low productivity, several times Mario Cimoli has stressed this point, social vulnerability, institutional weaknesses, and environmental vulnerability. This crisis has accentuated the need for a new generation of policy to build removing these traps and to foster citizen confidence. My third point is a point of urgency. Exactly because the situation is complex, now we have to pay attention to a general, global discontent, a social discontent, a discontent that we saw already some years ago in Tunisia, that took the name of Arab Spring with people in the street, but then we saw it in the street of Brazil, in Chile, in Colombia, in Ecuador. These are very strong signs that needs to be taken into account because in many occasions, the social contract went broken. And therefore we have to see how to build a new social contract. Obviously, the components have been several times listed by Alicia and Sepal. First of all, a clear productive strategy. Second, a social policy that is up to the need, moving towards universal and social protection system in societies with a very high level of informality and 40% of the population without any protection. And then later, not now, if not, we would block the process of going back to growth, a strong fiscal agenda that together we have emphasized in the past. We need fiscal reform, but we need also to have the multinational to pay the taxes where they produce or where they are present in their activities. We need to deal with the new challenges of digitalization for taxes, and we need to take into account expenditure. If we want citizens to be convinced of fiscal reform, then we need to put together a state intervention that is capable to allow expenditure that reduce the Gini coefficient. In Europe, we see that from before taxes to after taxes, the Gini coefficient is strongly reduced. We have said several times in Latin America, we don't observe the same thing. And therefore, the public expenditure are not contributing to a needed redistributed system. Now, we have seen that facing this pandemic, most countries reacted rapidly to support most vulnerable families, workers, and firms. But also, we have seen that countries have also found a lot of difficulties. So what to do? And here comes my last fourth point. We need to benefit from international cooperation. But let me be very clear, and you were so clear that I need just to quote quickly the things. We need to move from a system that was conceived 50 years ago on the basis of charity, cooperation as charity, to a system that now needs to be based on solidarity, cooperation as a form of solidarity. And I want to emphasize once more the change in name in the European Commission and the idea to strengthen international partnership between voices that are similar and that can sit at the same table to exchange experiences. On what? On political economy of reform. All the reform that we have to introduce to a clear productive strategy, a social policy, a fiscal agenda, need and require a serious political economy of reform. And we can learn from other experiences. We can learn from the experiences of, among others, the European Union that was built thanks to thousands of meetings between Director General of Ministries exchanging their experiences. And this is what in part is already taking place in CEPAL. Then we need to learn about regional integration. In this general context, regional integration is strongly needed. And it's enough to look on the other side of the ocean, what is happening in Africa, where there are extraordinary efforts to create one trade zone, to create an African Union with a strong strength, a NEPAD agency for development. So regional integration, and ASEAN, of course, regional integration is needed. And we can discuss with the European Union to know how this can take place. And finally, we need to establish a permanent form of policy dialogue, because what matters is not only the design of policy, but is their implementation as well, and evaluation. So for all these reasons, I think that working together for an inclusive and sustainable future is more than ever relevant. This is the purpose of the LEO. It has become a platform to contribute to implement reforms for better lives in the LAC region, dialoguing with other countries on an equal footing. And thanks to key partners as the ECLAC, the European Commission, and the CAF, I think we have done something relevant. In my concern, it has been a pleasure and honor to be part of the team building all of it. Thank you, dear friends.
Thank you so much, my dear Mario. Now everybody can know why you're going to be dearly missed, and that we are going to invite you probably to come along to Latin America and the Caribbean, because you have been one of the most important supporters of our region. Thank you so much. In the LEO, I just want to highlight that we are also going to have 3 cross-cutting themes: climate change and green recovery, the gender dimension, and the digital transformation. I think these 3 elements are going to be there because they are so important to cross-cut the whole thing. Colleagues, allow me to make a little change and give the floor to Marta Delgado, because she has to go. Marta, my dear, I know that you were the first to join in this Zoom meeting. So, and I also welcome Paul Chet Green. Thank you so much, my dear minister. Allow me then to have Marta first, because she has to leave very soon. Marta, we have interpretation if you wish to speak in Spanish and English, not in any other language, please. But let me tell you, Marta, how pleased, qué contenta, qué feliz estoy de que estés con nosotros.
that I'm very, very happy to have you here with us. Marta Delgada, aside from being Undersecretary in multilateral issues in Mexico, is a champion for sustainable development, gender equality, urban agenda, climate change. Yesterday in Mexico, or a couple of days ago, she submitted the national report of progress on the agenda, on the 2030 agenda. And that's the third time, I think, that Mexico submits its voluntary report. So Mexico has been outstanding in this. And aside from the report and everything that we do with the EU and OECD and with you as well, is wonderful. Dear Marta, thank you very much for being with us. I know it's really early. You kind of tumble out of your bed, but we're happy to have you here with us. Alicia, quite the opposite. It's indeed a tremendous honor for me to be here with you. With Mario Piccini, I'm very thankful for the invitation. I greet all of the ministers and colleagues in the audience. So thank you once more for the invitation. First of all, I'd like to thank ECLAC and the European Commission because this is indeed a very important event under the current circumstances. And for Mexico, the economic outlook is one of the most important reports that we really paid deep attention to, because this means that we must work together for an inclusive, sustainable world. And it is very important during these times of pandemic. It stresses collective action, international action that must be coordinated for a sustainable economic recovery. This study brings in many recommendations that ECLAC has brought to us in other fora for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it has to do with short-term measures and long-term measures to include the three dimensions, social, economic, environmental aspects of development. We know that GDP in the region has reduced in the region in more than 7%, and that has become one of the worst crises that we have been facing lately. It has affected the more vulnerable populations. Among these, women and indigenous people, rural inhabitants. Inequality and poverty is growing in the region, and we already have 40% of workers in the region in that. And when there's no access to social protection, this brings along other consequences for their lives. It's very important, therefore, to understand that one of the priorities for the region today is to stop unemployment, to tackle the challenges in the labor market, in the jobs, and in the informal economy also that has such an impact amongst young people, native Afro-descendants, and migrants. This is a topic that is seen at the center of our list of priorities for the recovery of the pandemic. Mexico, as Ms. Bárcena well said, has already submitted its third voluntary report in the 2030 agenda. And there we talk about the relevance of adapting the response to the pandemic with shared responsibility amongst all sectors of the society to bring in the perspectives of sustainable recovery with a privileged idea on rights and offering the structural conditions that right now affect the scope of fiscal policy. And the time also demands multilateral response, international cooperation. Since the pandemic is global and we have been caught with this disease, but a disease that also brings in lack of well-being and low quality of life. But the solution should also be contagious. And I'm talking about cooperation. We must solve the challenges in international cooperation. It must be strong, renewed, and the multilateralism should be truly effective. We should also take advantage to adapt, to get the international organizations to adapt their responses because they must be fast. We have all already noticed that we often lack the sound and rapid response from these organizations. We know that we must achieve that herd immunity, as some call. Alicia said something very important. The delay in access to vaccination brings recovery, makes it even farther, and it also does not allow us to meet our uh, goals in this sustainable development. Alicia talked about a strategy for universal vaccination, an early vaccination, and also with the diplomatic endeavors. The foreign minister was the one in charge of getting together with all of the countries in order to analyze the possibilities of access that Mexico could have to vaccines. Mexico has also given out vaccines to our neighbor countries. 1 year ago at UN, we demanded equal access and international solidarity for access to the vaccinations. And when we had enough, I'm not saying that we have finished, we're at about midway of the vaccination process, but still we decided to share our vaccination with brother uh, countries, El Salvador, Belize, Honduras, Jamaica, Paraguay. These are countries that have received some of these vaccinations, and this reinforces our collaboration with Argentina, and we have sent AstraZeneca vaccines.
In third place, within the framework of the ONU, we're looking to see how we can overcome the deficiencies of international cooperation. But in the framework of the contemporary, we have also SELAC that was mentioned also by Alicia. We have almost dedicated like a full year to this. Community has worked for a full year to work together on the matters of COVID to increase our capacity for distributing these medications, including the vaccination, and to have an ethical and scientific policies to be able to strengthen our regulatory entities. This is within an integral plan of health matters of the region. I'd like to just put an end by saying that the recommendations of Leo 2021, such as to collaborate with the institutions that are already giving us a good light about how they're implementing these policies for recovery, such as ECLAC, OECD, and the alliance that we have with the European Union is also strategic. So we're sharing the vision that the future has to be sustainable, but it's also very important that the current crisis should be resolved with the support and also with, well, I think the word would be, and I should say this, I think, a vision that is inclusive of how cooperation should be. And I say this because, for example, these vaccination passports by different types of vaccinations or by regions exclude people. And that like our children who don't have a certain type of vaccination or don't have a booster or a reinforcement vaccination, when there are many more democratic ways and less exclusive ways of doing this, such as a PCR test, to be able to have access to international traveling. For example, this is a matter that's going to bring about a lot of conflict, but right now we have many parts of the world are still in lockdown, but we want to open up. We need a strategy that will think about equality and non-discrimination. And that's why I'm bringing these points to the table. And finally, I'd like to say that the resilience is going to be something we're all going to be talking about in Latin America, the Caribbean, as well as Europe. No one is safe until we're all safe, until all communities have this resilience before a crisis such as this health pandemic, but also impacts of climate change or migration. There can be also be two phenomena that will affect development of the region similar to the pandemic. So thank you very much for your Thank you, Marta, and really thank you, Mexico, and you especially, for all of the work that you have done, not only in the national agenda, but also in the multilateral agenda and the regional agenda. This is a great matter that you are working that has to do with the procurement of vaccinations and resilience of the region, and the matter of gender and urban agenda. What else? One day we're going to invite you so you can talk to us about the whole portfolio that you manage, because they're all so important. Thank you very much for being with us, and we hope, well, you see, by the way, this year, we've been collaborating between the OECD and the Center for Development Center and the European Union on this Leo report, and it's been an excellent experience because we go hand by hand, and the truth is that we are influencing, quote unquote, in the thoughts of the OECD. There's mainstreaming, isn't that what we say, Mario Pensini? Because sometimes in Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean, they don't always see us. We go by unadverted. And so I was very happy to have you with us, Marta. Thank you very much.
Really want to welcome our very dear Minister, Paul Chet-Green. Paul Chet-Green has been for us, he's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Immigration of Antigua and Barbuda. And I want to commend you, dear Minister, because Antigua and Barbuda has been so affected by this classification of middle-income countries. Antigua and Barbuda has also been hardly hit by external debt, by vulnerability of natural disasters. And Antigua and Barbuda for us is a country that has been such a good, I would say, has played solidarity so well. It's a country that comes to ECLAC, that comes to all the meetings that we call in ECLAC. We try to be with them as well. And I just want to announce that the next conference of social development will take place in Antigua and Barbuda. And I want to say, Minister, how pleased we are that you have offered us to hold that conference in Antigua and Barbuda. I hope it's going to be presential. I hope that we can be physically there to enjoy the beauties of Antigua and Barbuda. So let me turn quickly to you, dear Minister, and tell you that just an announcement, that next 19 and 20 August, we're going to have a meeting of the South-South Cooperation Committee chaired by Costa Rica, in which we are going to present a document that is called Development in Transition, a concept and a new way of measuring progress and development opportunities for a renewed cooperation in Latin America and the Caribbean. We will take with us the Leo, but we will also take this reflection about the challenges of the middle income countries. Dear Minister, the floor is yours. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, my friend, and good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in today's forum. Let me thank you for the invitation, and also on behalf of the people and government of Antigua and Barbuda, express our willingness and readiness to be a part of today's theme of working together for an inclusive and sustainable future. I think the theme for today's confab is quite apropos given the realities and complexities of what we are facing with the pandemic and the other challenges to sustainable development. It's interesting that I'm presenting to you today, or speaking to you today, having presented our first VNR only 2 days ago. And the topic of today's discussion of a sustainable future fits very much and snugly into the UN SDGs and the need for collaborative efforts on the global stage. Let me also thank the ECLAC, the EU, and the OECD for calling together this very important and seminal event intended to build not only capacity, but relations going forward. As the topic says, we build towards a sustainable future. It is clear that the challenges of the Caribbean and of small island states are real. Climate change, and I'll start there, is real. It is not tomorrow, it's not a day after, it is today and needs to be dealt with greatest urgency. Our very existence, our very survival depends on the level of cooperation and collaboration that the global community gives to this very important issue. When I spoke 2 days ago at the Vienna, I spoke of the vulnerabilities of small island states. And allow me, Madam Chair, to not only speak on behalf of Antigua and Barbuda, but as we sit in the chair of AOSIS, to make representation on behalf of all small island developing states. Listeners and participants can always personalize my comments and relate them back to my country, Antigua and Barbuda. But I feel a sense of compulsion to speak on behalf of a global community of small island developing states who face, for the most part, the same types of challenges, who have the same request of the international institutions and the global community for solidarity, for cooperation, for advocacy, and certainly that need of coming together to ensure that our future on our shared planet, Earth, is a good and successful one for us all. When we speak of the challenges of small island states and our vulnerabilities, in the Caribbean context, we are faced annually with hurricanes. The 2021 Atlantic hurricane season has started. Already, Caribbean countries have been affected. Several millions have been lost in Barbados, in St. Lucia, in St. Vincent and Grenadines, where their challenges have been doubled, multiplied, because not only was there a hurricane this year already, but they're still fighting the build back from the volcano and the activities of the volcano there. That's a threat. And so as we go through the 2021 hurricane season, which is predicted by experts to be more ferocious, with stronger storms, a longer season, with more storms developing, it places us in a position to better understand the challenges, the vulnerabilities of Caribbean states. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, we had our last hurricane affecting our sister island Barbuda in 2017. And while we got some $7 million from the insurance facility, it was more than $200 million required for the build back. Today, 2017 is what, 4 years on? The build back continues, but the effects of there's no longer a global conversation about Hurricane Irma. In other words, I'm saying to you that long after the headlines have shifted focus from Irma onto other issues and vulnerability challenges, Antigua and Barbuda is still in the build-back mode, having to find resources to do so. I don't have to mention, except for repetition purposes, that we are not a major emitter. We are the victims of emissions. And that is where it brings again the focus on the need for cooperation, collaboration, and for a global community response. The challenges are real. Not only are we dealing with hurricanes in the context of the build back from past storms, but we're dealing with the current day situation of a pandemic for which we are still very much behind, not having sufficient vaccines for people. Yes, there's vaccine apathy across the Caribbean, like the rest of the world. The uptake is not as we would all want to see it, to save lives and livelihoods. But notwithstanding that, Caribbean countries are challenged. We continue to feel like we are mendicants in a global community where our populations are not inoculated sufficiently to achieve herd immunity. And it's not only about vaccine hesitancy, it's about vaccine availability. And the fact that large countries, vaccine-producing countries, have failed to give positive responses to small nations. We have unique challenges where vaccines sent to one Caribbean country and shared with another is now incurring the wrath of the donor countries. And it begs the question, what therefore is the mission? Isn't it about saving lives? We have to look at the pandemic and the fallout, not only in terms of the medical dimension of it, but also the socio-economic dimensions of it. Countries like mine, today we are faced with huge debt. And our debt portfolio continues to grow and to increase because It is from one cycle of vulnerability to another. It's not hurricanes, it is now the pandemic, having to borrow to maintain public sector expectations or public expectations. And then we have the vexing issue of not being able to access concessional financing because someone says from the G7 countries that we have graduated and that our GDP places us outside of the scope of accessing concessional funding. The truth is, there is now a need, if never before, there is now an urgent need, an obvious need for the creation of a multidimensional vulnerability index to deal with the realities of small island states like Antigua and Barbuda. Our constant build back and rebuilding for resilience with resilience and forethought happens at great cost. And so whilst we cannot access concessional funding, the spiraling of debt and all having to borrow from the commercial sector, which is not only untenable, but certainly is not anything helpful to small countries, is part of the reality of our existence and our call for the creation of a multidimensional vulnerability index. Small countries not only expect, but small countries are now demanding that this be made a part of the international discussion. We pride ourselves as part of the global community. The world without us is not the world. We have a right to be here like all else, and our needs are real. We cannot continue with jargon of cooperation and collaboration when in practice, we do quite the opposite. Another area of concern for Caribbean countries and small island states is the issue of blacklisting. Why not cooperative discussions? Every Caribbean country barring none, seeks to be a part of the international financial sector, of the international trading system, and the idea of blacklisting without consultation serves only to yield undesirable results and perhaps unintended consequences. We give our colleagues in the larger nations the benefit of the doubt, and we look at the outcomes as being unintended consequences. And if unintended they are indeed, it makes a case for dialogue, for conversation, so that we can arrive at modules and modalities and mechanisms. Because we are as part of the global infrastructure, wish to see a clean global financial sector. If you look at the challenges of the global financial sector and all the blacklisting and the loss of correspondent banking relations that impact Caribbean countries, just like climate change, you'll agree that all contributions are negligible. Yet, we are the victims of the very constructs that are put together in these areas. The issue of loss of correspondent banking relations serves only to delink the Caribbean from the rest of the global trading system. It has impact for every sector of our economies. Because if we cannot trade internationally, there will certainly be greater fallouts among SIDS at the level of each of our respective island countries. We will not be able to buy medicines for people. We will not be able to maintain our education infrastructure. So that health and education are immediately impacted. Our economies dependent on tourism. If visitors to our region cannot use their plastics as they go to pay because we're delinked from the international trading system, it means that our economies will collapse. I'm up to this morning not to use anything but real life experiences and examples, and matching language to show the challenges, the real life challenges that we face. To make a case and make a point in support of this forum and a selected theme of cooperation and collaboration for sustainable future. And that, by extension, should be a sustainable future for mankind, for all of mankind, all of humankind. Antigua and Barbuda, like the rest of the world, continue to fight with the COVID virus, the pandemic. And so vaccines become a real need. If we are to see a return of some economic activity to the region, our people need to be vaccinated. The science have determined that 70% of the population is required to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. We need to achieve herd immunity if our people are to be seen as part of a global reset. A global reset leaving some countries and regions of the world in the backwaters, if I may use that term, is not a positive development or sustainable development for mankind. And that is why I want to commend ECLAC, the EU and the OECD for putting together this forum and for inviting states like mine, countries like mine, to present our side of today's reality so that in the recrafting of the resiliency policies and projects, of the sustainability projects for the world, mark you, not for some, but for the world, that we are not left out. We pride ourselves in our membership of the UN and other global constructs intended to facilitate and to foster collaboration, cooperation, and which by themselves serve as coordinating points for global good. Let me, before I end, thank the COVAX initiative for vaccines donated to Antigua and Barbuda, the government and people of India for vaccines donated to us, to other countries, other organizations that have made vaccines available, notwithstanding the fact that in numbers, numerically, they do not allow us to achieve herd immunity, but we are nonetheless appreciative. Let me fast forward to COP26 and the importance of this very global structure with respect to our vulnerability and the climate issues that we face. As we discussed this morning, the issue of building sustainable relations and sustainability for the nations of the world, we see COP26 as the most important tool and vehicle in this process. The COVID pandemic has all but wiped out all the gains and achievements we've had in our development agenda. We are not daunted. We are committed to continuing the rebuilding process post-COVID. We are committed, even as I speak, to safeguarding the lives and livelihoods of our people and encourage every nation to do the same. To do the same with greater levels of collaboration and cooperation, because this one impacts and affects us all. With GDP contraction of more than 22%, it is clear that that measurement is no longer applicable when discussing our vulnerabilities, our challenges, and certainly our projected future. That government resources have plummeted by more than 40% during this pandemic period also serve to make the statement pellucid that the global community has an obligation to come to the assistance of SIDS as we revisit the rebuilding process, which is so much needed at this time in this pandemic period. Madam Chair, I'm going to pause. But I hope the case is made, if for nothing else, for the OECD and the EU to give active consideration, like the UN is, like the Commonwealth is, to the creation, not just a study, we've gone past the study now, to the active creation of a multidimensional vulnerability index needed to save and safeguard SIDS. As we join in commemorating, in agreeing, in working with you with respect of building back stronger, and deal with the issue of the future with resilience and certainly sustainability. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And we hear you very loud and clear, both as, of course, as a Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, but also as the chair of AOSIS. And I truly believe, dear Minister, that you should be in the table, and we want you to be in the table. So in all the future, I would say we are going to work very closely on this multidimensional development index. I think this is extremely important, and it has to be linked to the gaps, to the productivity gaps, to the social gaps, to the, I would say, to the institutional gaps, and to the financial gaps, of course. So we definitely need your voice and your, I would say, your help, so we can develop this multidimensional development index in a way that reflects the realities of these middle income developing countries, and particularly the Caribbean and the small island development states, because the climate, you raised it, climate vulnerability, the graduation, the blacklisting, the de-risking that we need to engage on. And also the vaccines. Of course, you have done quite well, I have to say, dear Minister, because Antigua and Barbuda has been able to vaccinate almost 28% of your population, which is well over the average of the region. And I think that the developed countries should understand that they should share and donate their vaccines to the Caribbean, because that's where they want to go in their holidays, isn't that right? So if they want to go there, I mean, it's a security issue that has to be put on the table. You have done your bit and you have done a great job, but we definitely need a priority in the access to vaccines. Thank you so much, Minister. We will continue working very closely with you, your government, your team, and of course, all the AOSIS, and definitely all the Caribbean as a whole. Déjenme pasar ahora la palabra a un amigo muy querido, que es Rubén.
I now will turn over to my dear friend. We are very, very honored to have you here with us. We're very happy to have your presence here, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs from Dominican Republic, Mr. Alvarez. Dominican Republic has also done the vaccination pretty well, with a fast pace of vaccination. 18% of the population is vaccinated. They have made tremendous efforts in spite of all of these hard challenges brought in by the pandemic. Dear Ruben, Dominican Republic also has an important role in the International Committee to host the next summit. And by the way, the previous summit, Costa Rica, Uruguay, and Chile, talked about the challenge of searching for measurements beyond GDP per capita. And there is a mandate there, and I hope that Dominican Republic will allow us, as you as host of this big American summit, that to bring forward the results, the outcome. And we do hope to be able to contribute to that, because Costa Rica has requested that of us, and you may grant us the possibility to show the results into that Ibero-American summit. Dear Minister, it's an honor to have you here with us. And Dominican Republic, by the way, has submitted 2 voluntary reports. And that is wonderful. It's wonderful listening to you. Yesterday, the second report, the second voluntary report, was submitted to the high-level political forum. You have the floor. And thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, Alicia. And I would like to start out by congratulating ECLAC's initiative, as well as OECD, in order to exchange ideas, experiences. And I can already say that you may count. We may count that the Mexican government will sponsor this presentation. At Doha, the chair, Luis Abinader, as of that moment, sponsored a meeting of ministers of finance where they discussed the topic of indebtedness and the need to create the common fund that we all want. The government of Dominican Republic is still very much committed to that endeavor. On behalf of my government, let me say that it's no secret that Latin America and the Caribbean has been facing many challenges even before COVID. The weakness of social security systems, high indebtedness, little fiscal scope, natural events and other structural events have limited our capabilities to be more resilient in view of crises. This scourge has been going on for decades now, as we all know. So the region has accrued a big ecological, social debt and of adaptation to productive systems. The pandemic has opened up our eyes and showed the need to leave behind the inertia. It's an appeal for action. The region may look at this situation and carry out the needed actions. Together with the health crisis, we must also attend the climate crisis as well as the economic and social effects coming from the pandemic. This requires vision, operation, and cooperation between all countries aside from the society as a whole. Building consensus on the most urgent needs among society is now more important than ever. In order to overcome this crisis and future crises, we need more resilient societies that will promote discussion amongst all in search for solutions. It requires a new social contract. Building close ties inside our countries allows us to better articulate foreign policies and regional efforts to have a sounder, more inclusive recovery. As a matter of fact, in order to face the tremendous multidimensional challenges we're facing, we must strengthen our cooperation between the region and internationally. We do understand that the global issues must be tackled at the same scale. We have witnessed different efforts in the last few months. In May, our finance ministers in the region approved a law to promote mechanisms and tools that will allow more access to funding for mid-income countries. That initiative under the Ibero-American Summit has been joined by other initiatives. These are positive signs showing that together we may better overcome adversity. And finally, I'd like to mention something very important. Even though COVID-19 has brought us back in many of SDG items, still we must bear in mind the goals of the 2030 agenda. The post-COVID recovery will make us redouble efforts to be more creative, to reinvent ourselves if we wish to implement these commitments. It's an opportunity to rebuild, but to build back better. And before concluding, I'd like to once more insist our congratulations to ECLAC for being able to respond with realistic responses as related to the crises. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this excellent event. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruben. I bring warm greetings to your president, who was also recently in his birthday, celebrating his birthday. So please send our greetings, and you may count on us. I'm also talking about on behalf of Pesini and all of us, because you, and we do hope that the Ibero-American Summit that you will host will be very successful. And ECLAC is at your service to help you prepare all of the information that may be useful so that that event will be truly success in these very important times of multilateralism. And we now will listen to a message coming from the foreign minister from Uruguay. My dear friend, Francisco Bustillo, Foreign Affairs Minister from Uruguay. And afterwards, I will open the floor for anyone who wishes to talk. You can raise your hand, or you can also state your question at the chat. I have already a couple questions, the last one from India. So let us immediately put on the video from the Uruguayan Foreign Affairs Minister. Dear Executive Secretary from ECLAC, Director from International Relations from EU, Director of the Development Center from OECD, authorities, it is indeed a pleasure to bring greetings to this pre-launching of Leo 2021. Uruguay strongly backs this joint effort that has been going on for 13 years by OECD, ECLAC, and CAPA with the support of the European Union through the Facility for Towards Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. In a world so much impacted by this pandemic that has taken lives and brought such harsh consequences, especially in the region, the commitment with multilateralism and international cooperation becomes more urgent than ever. The El Leo report is an excellent example because it talks about the macroeconomic situation of Latin America and the Caribbean, and that in itself is a tremendous effort for dialogue, joint work between different parts of the region. And also because Leo helps to contribute to the exchange of ideas from a multi-dimensional perspective of development. We now must think about how to improve the world we have after the pandemic. Certainly a more fairer, more humane world. The pandemic has shown the fragility of the international system, not only for less developed countries, but also for those with more material and human development. In order to face the social and economic effects of the crisis, we must have a more flexible international scenario with more cooperation, willing to make agreements to bring in more well-being to all individuals and also working towards a multilateral trade system based on open supply and standards so as to delete barriers to trade. The pandemic has confirmed the need for a transitional development system that is defended by Uruguay. We're not talking about just economic issues. We must include social and environmental issues with human rights in mind. We must also talk about governance, confidence in institutions, coherence amongst policies, and coordination amongst all stakeholders. We must have a list of priorities and have a more comprehensive view of development. A new development covenant must also bear in mind other rights and global public goods, education, access to technology and knowledge, especially scientific knowledge, and the digital transformation. We do agree on the importance of international cooperation so that we may talk about issues such as investment, debt, and fiscal frameworks. Transitional development that we have defended in all international fora must be the starting point to support countries in their different paths towards sustainable development. Finally, I'd like to especially bring in Uruguay's gratefulness for the co-authors of Leo 2021, the Development Center from EU, ECLAC, and CAF. We also thank the European Union for their contribution in bringing in the transitional development in Latin America and the Caribbean, Leo report, and the other activities that are being conducted. In facing the future, we must continue to develop policies towards economic and social recovery of our countries, those that will encourage investment to create more jobs, as well as those that aim at improving social indicators. For that, we must look for incentives towards the private sector, as well as conditions for having more competitiveness, attracting more investment that will bring in more quality jobs. Thank you. Thank you, dear Foreign Affairs Ministers from Uruguay, for your kind words. I now am pleased to open up the floor to other speakers. I will immediately give the floor to Rodrigo Carasta, who is the ambassador or, or the permanent from Costa Rica at UN. He is my dear friend. And Costa Rica, by the way, is now chairing that system. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a pleasure to continue accompany Alicia Bárcena. And we are indeed pleased to participate here in talking, debating with topics such as important as the ones we're doing today that have been mentioned at the Lee report with ECLAC, OECD, and EU. The time has come for these institutions to get together to say, let us no longer use these old, obsolete concepts in measuring poverty, in measuring development, with those obsolete rules. And that is something that we have just heard by the Foreign Affairs Minister from Antigua and Barbuda. Alicia has for quite some time now insisted on the possibility of having a rating agency of public foreign debt of our countries and not just considering mere commercial issues. Let us keep in mind these efforts. And they are quite clearly stated in the 2030 agenda. But let us go into these financing processes that will aim at these objectives. So I'm very happy to hear once more about the Costa Rican idea to help out the economies because of the COVID pandemic. We're talking about a large transfer of resources that we just heard that are abundant in the world in order to satisfy the lack of resources in the region so that we may jointly face the big needs from our region. So I wish to congratulate the sponsors of this publication, Leo, and those who push ahead the process that has to do with development in transition, something that is now being consolidated under the auspices of the agency that we just mentioned. And this also is very important when we talk about the next summit in Dominican Republic. Thank you, Ambassador, and we will continue
Thank you very much. We'll continue.
calling on these meetings hand in hand with Costa Rica because of what's coming in the next few months. Thank you very much for your support and especially for the willingness to really tackle this cooperation into the future with new concepts.
I'm very happy to see Gloria Alonso with us here and to be able to welcome her to this seminar. She is the ambassador before the OECD from Colombia. She will tell us, but especially she was the director of DNP, which is the National Directorate for Planning in Colombia and for the National Department of Planning. And she participated in the Bank of the Republic. So she's had a wonderful career. And now from OECD in Paris, she is going to give us a few comments. You have the floor, Gloria. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Alicia. I really warm greetings to you and Mario and this whole team that you've called to this very interesting event, which is very important for the region, without a doubt. Now, I was listening to everyone, and each and every one of the messages that I heard, well, of course, they're absolutely important. So I just want to congratulate you all of the entities and the international organizations, and of course, the OECD, who is a part, very important for the part of this report for economic matters that we all know as Leo 2021. So I know this, I'm sure there's no doubt whatsoever that today it's important to join efforts and work together in the analysis and the proposal and of course the messages that will be reinforced and help us to adopt policies for the region. As has been said several times before, LEO is a platform that helps us discuss our common challenges, recognizing, of course, there are differences in Latin America from country to country. And Colombia, well, Colombia has been a country that has always supported the report LEO. This report is very important for Colombia. And from the DNP, Colombia contributes to dialogues around this report. And well, we clearly hope that this will continue. And well, what's happening today is a proof of the fact that it is a platform for a dialogue for the region. Without a doubt, this whole matter of Leo 2021 is pertinent. So it will be able to have sustainable recovery and inclusive throughout the whole region. Without a doubt, this is a matter that hurts us all. We need a multidimensional framework at the center of the public agenda to ensure our citizens' well-being. And in this sense, we need this reinforced cooperation that will contribute to improving the capacities in each and every one of our countries. And of course, it is fundamental to promote that global agenda in matters that have been mentioned, such as digitalization, climate change, migration, or immigration, because those are the people who are most greatly affected by the pandemic. We know that women and young people deserve to have a special view or to be looked at as a separate matter. And then, of course, matters that have to do with the fiscal matters. We're talking about a strategy for sustainable and resilient growth. Well, this discussion about the sustainability of debt in the region has to be part of the agenda. The debate about informal employment, of course, and informal matters that have to do with climate and climate change and all the things that you, Alicia, and others have talked about. I don't even need to go into all the details, but we really do have a great need to talk about these matters. So there is a point that I believe is important, that is cooperation for the European Union. That's fundamentally important, not only to strengthen the relationship among two regions, Latin America and Europe, but I also think it's even more interesting to be accompanied by the European Union with regards to solutions for matters that are of structural importance in the region. How in the region, for example, we're facing this development in transition, which is much more complex. If we want to build a sustainable development agenda in this post-pandemic times, or when the post-pandemic time comes, so the support is of crucial importance. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples that we've been doing in Colombia that has a lot to do with this agenda that we're talking about. Now, of course, the response to the social economic crisis, the government has supported vulnerable groups, adopting groups that is called like vulnerable, it's called like help for very poor vulnerable groups to make sure that poverty doesn't become worse. And now they've also, in Colombia, we've also included greater help for other groups of families that normally were not included in this type of help. And you in other countries have also included this because we have so many immigrants, especially from Venezuela, and so there is help for these groups of immigrants. And for us in Colombia, it's absolutely important to help this population of Venezuelans who are that are living in poverty in Colombia. And so it's a project that we have because it really has an impact on the whole region of Latin America. And then we have programs for entrepreneurial formation or training. Also to help countries, to help companies. This is something that's been talked a lot with our governments. It's a program for subsidies to support employment and also help to make entrepreneurs or much more formal. So all of these matters in these post-pandemic times, most of them are transversal to this region, and without a doubt, we need reinforced cooperation and to have platforms for dialogues like this one we have with called Leo, to be able to transmit knowledge and discuss these agendas, which are quite complex, and to be able to take action and to be able to implement the recommendations that come out from this, because that is the sense of this document, this type of document. So we hope, and we will be paying attention for the launching of this report. And once again, my congratulations for this wonderful event. Alicia, Mario, thank you very much, each and everyone. Thank you, dear Gloria. And I hope that we'll be able to copy this event and replicate it there in Paris with you, when the OECD and the ambassadors that represent us. That would be magnificent, that we'll be able to have it there. So Gloria, help us and let's see how we can get this together. Yeah, count on me. Yeah. So we have two brief questions or people who want to take the floor quickly, because we don't want Claudia to leave because she's going to help us close this session. But I do want to give the floor to Paula Sevilla, because she's a scholar from New York University, Pathfinders. And in fact, I want to thank Paula because Paula has written a great deal about inequality. And she's very close to us, to ECLAC. Paula, your ideas, your conclusions have been fantastic. And now you're in the Center of International Cooperation from New York University. So please, we'd love to hear what you have to say. Yeah. Hello, greetings from New York, from the International Center for Cooperation. First of all, I just wanted to greet you and say hello to all of the members of the panel, and especially the countries of Latin America, especially those who are our pioneers for an inclusive society, and of course, the whole team of ECLAC, Alicia Barcena, whom I admire personally. More than a comment, I just wanted to propose a question. Within the context of the pandemic, have there been any new opportunities to fight fiscal evasion? I'm not going to repeat all of the data that you all know, thanks to the work that has been done by the chair of ECLAC, to talk about how important it is to fight fiscal evasion, to be able to have the funds to fight the pandemic and be able to create a more inclusive future. Thank you, Paula. And yes, we are very happy to have you here with us today. And definitely fiscal evasion, tax evasion are matters that we have to talk about. And we are talking about, I'd like to give you a very important example that has to do with Mexico. Now, last year, Mexico had some initiatives to truly fight tax evasion, and they were able to increase their GDP quite importantly. Now, of course, this is a country that's taking important steps to fight tax evasion. We have measured it. We do this. We look at this from an overall picture, and we've seen that they've been able to recover an important percentage of GDP due to getting less tax evasion. So yes, we will be telling you how this is going, and your question is fantastic, and I'm very happy that you're with us here today.
Please, you take the floor briefly, if you may, because we are already very late for this panel. Thank you for being with us, Falguni from India. That's incredible. I'm impressed. Falguni, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia, and thank to my great buddy Mario. As you know, in this pandemic, we learned many things. According to me, we have to follow 5 economy that are the well-being principle, the justice principle, the planetary boundaries principle, the efficiency and sufficiency principle, the good governance principle. And another thing is, as you know, I'm a youngster in front of you. Today's youngster, tomorrow superstar. So we have to create more employment opportunity, developing problem-solving skills, providing a prosperous, happy life, creating modern society, and bridging the borders and extend the skills. And at last, I suggest to you all are my senior economists, senior bureaucrats, and senior policymakers, that towards fulfillment of Agenda 2030, academia must furthermore increase collaboration with all stakeholders of the society. And I congratulate Alicia, my great buddies Mario and my buddy Rodrigo, that you already done. You all are senior, you already done. We have to gain experience from you, and we are the powerhouse of world. If we can't gain experience, then who will develop next 5 to 10 years? That's the mentality. And I thank you and namaste. And I will suggest everyone that we should be like a friend in need, a friend in need. As you know, the whole world is one family. Yes, in 2007, in 2008, and you also know that in 1970, there also a pandemic come. But we have to stand each other, and we have to work a friend in need, a friend in need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Falguni. I hope you will keep on connecting with us. We need you, the young voices, and particularly from other parts of the world. So thank you so much. Let me pass the floor very briefly to Mario Pezzini so he can give his final remarks, and then we will turn, of course, to my dear Claudia Gintersdorfer. Thank you for being with us, Claudia. Mario, please.
Well, everything has already been said. I would like just to take the suggestion of Paula recalling that exactly the dialogue between the two sides of the Atlantic can be very interesting when it comes now to a moment of major crisis and what to do in terms of public expenditure. I think that a lot of things can be done in this phase, and I think that the recent agreement for an equal business tax demonstrate that we can go farther, in particular when it comes to the revenue of multinational firms. We would not be credible in any fiscal reform if we don't address this issue together with the illicit financial flows. At the same time, exactly looking at the experience of the two sides of the Atlantic, I would recall that we have to avoid the mistakes that we have done after the crisis of 2008. And any movement towards a rigid and ideological austerity now would be detrimental for the overall possibility to recover. And in particular in developing countries, let me emphasize a point. Before the crisis, the economy was not in a good shape. Trade was growing only 0.7, and the growth, particularly in OECD countries, was very weak. As a consequence, what we need to do is to hope that the locomotive, and in particular developing countries, can provide matter elements of a recovery. And for everything else that has been said, in particular the idea of a multi-dimensional index for development, I cannot be but in agreement. And together with Alicia, in the Facility of Development in Transition, we are working on applying well-being indicators in Latin American countries. In fact, there is something that we cannot accept anymore, that we have to continue to use GDP because there are no alternatives. The alternatives exist, are there. We need simply to use them in bureaucratic process of decision making. So for all those marginal comments, thank you for giving the floor, Alicia, but all the debate was extremely interesting, fertile, and it confirms what has been confirmed in the two sides of the Atlantic, in the SEGIP Ministeria. We need to work on development in transition in the Council in Europe. We have to work on development in transition. And thank you, and also Stefano Manservisi, and because the three of us, we launched this issue, and I think it has been catch up. And thanks, Falguni, as usual. Thanks. No te escuchamos, Alicia.
Sí, yo solita estaba muteada. I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
So much, Claudia Ginsterdorfer. I really believe that your presence here, dear Claudia, is so important because this is the presence of the European, I would say the European External Action Service, el Servicio de Acciones Exteriores de la Unión Europea. And we are so happy that you are with us today because we need all the sides of the European Union and of the European Commission, and you play such a key role. And through you, please let me send a very, very warm greeting to Joseph Borrell and to all the team. And of course, the floor is yours, dear Claudia, to close this event on our behalf, please.
Many thanks for your warm words, dear Alicia. And I would also like to send apologies for my director, Javier Niño, who was in fact supposed to be closing the session, but unfortunately there were some urgencies that caught up with him. And so he asked me to send his warmest regards to all of you. It's really a pleasure for me to be here in this event, the pre-launch of this LEO, which of course, as you know, is a joint product by CEPAL, by OECD, by the European Commission. And I would like to warmly thank all of you for your efforts. So dear Alicia, dear Mario, and also dear colleagues from the Commission. I believe that Kunduns probably had to leave, but also of course Yolita. We're very much working together on this very useful product, which has gathered so many interesting participants here. And of course, also, I was very impressed by the panel. Entonces, distinguidos miembros del panel y ministros, realmente fue un placer poder escucharlos y el interés que todos ustedes han demostrado por la iniciativa de Leo.
You have also shown these excellent initiatives to Leo. And now I pass on to
Alicia, and just to say that he is really fully committed to the work that you're carrying out here together. And this really is important for us not only to be able to survive this terrible crisis which has hit Latin America and the Caribbean, but also Europe. And in fact, it is a global crisis, as we all know. But I hope it will help us to bring fresh ideas to the table on how we can mitigate the impact and overcome it and come out stronger to build a common strategic and forward-looking agenda. And just to say that the European External Action Service is also very happy to sit on the steering committee of the Facility for Development and Transition to support the LEO and all the other initiatives which are essential to bring fresh ideas to the table, innovative ideas that are very much needed in this difficult situation. I wanted to make reference maybe a little bit also to the political context we're in. You may, or some of you may not know, but we held a very successful EU and LAC ministerial meeting last December, which in fact underscored the urgency to step up our common efforts to overcome the multidimensional challenges brought by the COVID pandemic. Which risks exacerbating already existing structural gaps, weaknesses, such as also the challenge of inequalities, social and economic exclusion. And so this discussion has also been further developed in recent meetings of the European Union Ministers for Foreign Affairs. They discussed it already last October. They discussed again this June, and this is something that really High Representative Borrell has brought to the table. He really is interested in strengthening the partnership, in helping the LAC region to overcome this crisis, and he has certainly moved up Latin America and Caribbean the policy agenda of the European Union. So let me just briefly say what we have tried to do to help in this situation to overcome the current crisis. So from the European side, we first focused on the immediate COVID response through something that we have called Team Europe initiatives. So this means that we try to bring together all the European actors, the European institutions, the member states, but also financial institutions, including the European Investment Bank. And so we already had committed by January around 2.5 billion euros for delivering humanitarian and emergency response, strengthening also health, water, sanitation. So not just about COVID itself, but we know that the whole health system was put under strain because of COVID. And we always talk, of course, of the dramatic death toll that COVID itself has taken and is still continuing to take, but we have to be aware that there are also people that did not die from COVID, but that died from other diseases because of the strain put on the health systems. So we are now well, just to say, of course, we know that European Union, we try to advocate a global response. So we channeled a lot of our resources through the COVAX. And I know that some of the countries here present were direct beneficiaries of, getting vaccines through COVAX without cost. Other countries contributed financially to order vaccines through the COVAX. We are acutely aware that the delivery has not always been as rapid and as efficient as all of us would have wished. So there is scope for improvement. And we are in fact also discussing on top of that with our member states, the issue of vaccine sharing. And we know that at least some of them will want to share vaccines also with Latin America and the Caribbean. And we as the European Union are giving logistical support to actually physically get the vaccines to where they are most needed. So just to say, looking beyond this crisis, because there is a strong social and human and economic toll that we will have to pay for this crisis. And so what is our vision? We want a recovery that is green, that is digital, that is sustainable, and also making sure that there are no retrocesses concerning human rights and democracy in the region, which also is very much put under strain. And we want to work towards achieving greater social cohesion and inclusiveness. And I just, if you allow me, wanted to quote back Minister Chet Green, who spoke earlier today when he spoke about a sustainable future for all of mankind. And that is very much a vision that we share also from the side of the European Union. So I know that many of us consider that we could still do more collectively. In this terrible crisis, just allow me to zoom in on 3 key aspects that we're working on now that we're also preparing the kind of financial framework for the next 7 years for our cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean. And the 3 aspects I wanted to mention are social protection systems, fiscal justice, and inclusive and participatory policy making. We all know that inequality, that Latin America, Caribbean is the most unequal region in the world. And this, of course, comes from before COVID, but COVID has acted as has made the situation even worse than it was already. We know also that COVID has hit very hard because of the informal employment structures that is affecting nearly 60% of the workforce. There are many vulnerable groups, which of course include women, youth, and also indigenous people, that have been harder hit than other groups. On the other hand, women have been at the forefront of the response, of the immediate response to COVID. 3/4 of health workers are women, facing long work days and increased risk of contagion. So these just a couple of things I wanted to mention. So it is difficult to think of a strong social contract in any society without an integrated social protection system, including universal health insurance, sickness and unemployment benefits. And so we must work together on broadening the system's coverage, but also improving the quality, the adequacy of those systems. And so we have to do this in close coordination with employment and labor policies that support the creation of quality jobs and more formal jobs. We must also rethink fiscal policies, as has already been highlighted, and be also inclusive in this process to ensure finally a fair redistribution and supporting upward social mobility. So this brings me to my last point. Citizens in Latin America have a widespread perception that things are not fair in terms of income distribution, also not fair in terms of access to public services and rights. And so there is a broad agreement, I think, that we need better social cohesion among civil society, business, authorities, and academia, and we need to build trust. Also in light of recent events in the region where we have increasing polarization in many countries, and we have people going out into the streets manifesting their discontent. So really a strong social pact built on citizens' trust, I think is key to overcoming the current crisis. It's of course something that's not easy to achieve, that needs goodwill from all the actors. And we really want to stand there and support in this sense from the European Union. There are many other things I could have expanded on. We also believe very much in green and digital transition. These will be priorities also for cooperation with the region. But I just wanted in this forum to highlight these aspects more related to the social cohesion. So I thank you very much for organizing this event and for your interest. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing this conversation on a different occasion. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Claudia. It's music to our ears when you talk about universal social protection. We are working on that and trying to put the numbers. How big is the gap? What do we need to do to bring jobs with rights, right? Because that would be the best way to achieve this. Of course, we are working on fiscal justice. Look at just the evasion rates of this region are unsurmountable. So we need to work on that. And on public participation, Claudia, that you mentioned, let me seek your support. We are presenting in ECOSOC as we speak today. We are presenting a resolution on the Escazú agreement on public participation, on environmental justice, on access to information. And we are seeking the support of the member states to establish the treaty enter into force just a couple of months ago. So we are asking support for the first COP, for the first conference of the parties, and we need the support of European Union. So if you can help us there, dear Claudia, is so important. So I'm sorry to take this chance to brief you on this, but we have some stumbling blocks and maybe your help there, because we need, you know what we need? We need instruments and institutional mechanisms to channel the public discontent. And Escazú is an instrument to channel public discontent. Many others, of course, the Constitution here in Chile and so forth. But anyway, we can talk about that. But Claudia, colleagues, thank you so much. We run over time, of course, but I think the panel was so interesting, and this was a panel dedicated to Mario Pezzini, because Mario, you have been the champion of all of us, and you have been pushing so hard for this to happen. So thank you so very much to you, to the European Union, to all the member states that were with us today. Claudia, thank you. Greetings, Ambassador Carazo. Thank you to all. Paula, Gloria, everybody, Chet Green. So I hope to see you very soon. Goodbye, and thank you.
Ciao, querida Alicia.
Recording stopped.
Lots of love from India. Bye bye.
Grazie.
Alicia, Mario.
Ciao,
After
Falcone.
COVID-19, I welcome to you both. Come India again. We all miss you.
Please, Claudia, call your colleagues in New York. We need your help in this ECOSOC resolution. Please,
Well,
please.
I mean, we are very strong supporters of the Escazú agreement. So if you like, just also contact us to see what we can do in concrete terms.
Yes, the vote is taking place today. So we hope we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Gracias. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.